Hello everyone, welcome to this Rangers Review special as we get a QPR insight into the new Rangers manager, Michael Beale. Fair to say, a few disgruntled QPR supporters losing their manager after, 5 months in charge. But I'm delighted to say that Alex Bullamore from the Our Generation QPR fan site joins us to talk about Michael Beale's short stint. It's ended up at Loftus Road. Alex, first of all, thank you very much for joining us.
Absolutely no problem. Happy to come on.
First of all, Alex, I'd imagine we're speaking off air. If the shoe was on the other foot, it must sting a little bit losing your manager in this way, especially after knocking back Wolves not so long ago.
Yeah, it's been an unfortunate couple of weeks, really. The Wolves one really came out of nowhere, to be honest. There's obvious links between Beale and Rangers, and I think he spoke to you guys at the start of the season saying he would like to come back to Rangers at some point. So it's not necessarily the most surprising thing that he's decided in the end that Rangers is a good move for him. Wolves was a little bit more out of the blue. And I think we were all quite delighted when he knocked that offer back. A Premier League club is always going to be a hard one to turn down. But at that point in the season, we were top, or we were just about to go top in the league. And now it's only a couple of games later, and it's all kind of gone a bit wrong. It is a bit disappointing that it's going to end up with him leaving so early. Personally, I'd kind of hope that he would stay to at least the end of the season, which seems crazy to say. I know there's no loyalty in football, but I think you kind of expect whenever you sign a manager that he at least sticks it out for a season, unless he's had a really bad time. He's not going to be leaving.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the interview he gave after knocking back the Wolves job, I know that the QPR fans were delighted to hear talking about the loyalty and integrity. I guess when Giovanni Van Bronckhorst lost his job a week ago, he was a name that was sort of the front runner, Alex, to take over. Did it sort of sticks in the throat a little bit after that interview that he's now leaving, like you say, a few games down the line, and he's no longer the QPR boss?
Yeah, that interview is quite a weird one, isn't it? Because I guess this is something that, reading between the lines, this could be an interview that the club said that he has to do to sort of try and win back the trust of the fans. And, he's going to have to say something in there that perhaps in the long run is going to make him look quite stupid, which I think to a certain extent, saying that your loyalty is really important and integrity and stuff like that, and then running off a few weeks later, it certainly paints another picture. Then from his point of view, he seems to be a victim of his own ambition, really. You could tell from when he came into the club right at the start that he was very ambitious in what he thought he was able to do as a manager. And I think we all kind of knew that this would be a stepping stone for him. And we got no real problem with that. It's just the timings of what's happened. But this isn't exactly the first time that the media team at QPR have done something similar to this. Like we had a couple of seasons ago, we had Naki Wells, a striker, on loan from Burnley. And there was a tweet that went out when there was rumours about him moving on to Bristol City that, he was just happy to be here. Well, week after that, he was at Bristol City starting for them, and they were tweeting that he was just happy to be there. So, it's not the first time that we make ourselves look a little bit silly, but I wonder whether the board or the media team or whatever it was behind the scenes sort of said, you've got to say these things in a sort of attempt to make him, I don't know, stay, I guess. It seems a weird thing to say, but that's just sort of reading between the lines. And, when your manager's saying stuff like that at the time, you really want to hope and believe it. But I always felt a little bit funny about it, I have to say.
Yeah. What was the feeling amongst the QPR fans when he was appointed back in the summer? Because no managerial experience. It was his first job as the main man, leaving Aston Villa and Steven Gerrard for the first time. What was the general feeling towards him?
I think it was definitely one of excitement. We we kind of flirted with the playoffs last season under Mark
Yeah.
Warburton, another ex-Rangers
Yeah.
manager. And it ended up, in a sort of sour situation. But we kept the core of a squad together, and with a few additions here and there, which we felt that we had done, we felt quite positive in going into the new season, and hopefully we were going to be a bit of an outsider for perhaps playoffs or something like that. And having looked at what he's done elsewhere and looked into what the former players that he had coached were saying, there's all these sort of glowing reviews and stuff, and it seems like a really decent appointment, an appointment that usually QPR wouldn't make. So we were definitely excited about what he could produce, and for the most part, it's been enjoyable.
Yeah. And I mean, the players he brought in, they were all free transfers, weren't they? And loan signings. So he sort of built a squad on a shoestring.
Yeah, and this is something I would, from your point of view, I would wonder whether he'd be able to repeat the same sort of tricks, because every sort of player that he's brought in has come in with his stamp of approval. He's seen them play in some youth tournament when they were 12 or something like that, or he's seen them play when he was Chelsea reserve manager or whatever it was. All these players are his players. They know him, he knows them, and he has this sort of photographic memory when it comes to seeing a player when they're developing at a young age, and he seems to know that they're going to be pretty decent for the future. So he's definitely got an eye for talent, and I just wonder. I really wondered when he was going to Wolves whether he would be able to repeat the same tricks there, because they have their sort of specific way with recruiting Portuguese players purely.
Yeah.
I wonder whether at Rangers he'd be able to do the same thing, because all these players he signed for us were on frees. There's obviously less scope to do that in the middle of the season. And if he wants to take any of the players from us, they're all under contract with us. So you're going to have to actually, pay us a certain amount of money to get these players now.
Yeah. Of course, he enjoyed that great start to the season, which led to the Wolves job offer. What was his style of play like, Alex? What can the Rangers fans expect to see from his side?
I think when we looked into it at the start of the season, we sort of kind of dawned on us a bit that, Beale was, I don't know whether you'd agree from this, with having him been at the club before under Gerrard, but it kind of felt like he was a bit more of the brains behind the operation.
Yeah.
And you looked at what he was, there's a couple of videos like the coach's voice, I think it was, on YouTube. Yes. He done a few there. And you look at that and you think, okay, so those formations, those styles, that's exactly what Villa have been playing. That's exactly what Rangers were playing. So your fullbacks are going to have to be very important. There's no... Generally, at the moment, we play 2 10s. That's probably... I don't know whether that's slightly because we've got... Our 2 best players are Ilias Chair and Chris Willock. So they are 2 outstanding players in the side, so they have to play. So you have to find a way to make them play. And that means playing 2 number 10s. And they kind of slightly inverted, I guess. They're not necessarily wingers. So your fullbacks become very important. They're bombing on the whole time. And he recruited well in getting Ethan Laird in on loan from Man United and Kenneth Powell on a free from some side in the Eredivisie. That would probably be the main thing. Fullbacks become very important. He likes playing 3 in midfield. One holding midfielder and then the other 2 sort of slightly more free to roam about a bit more. Mm-hmm. But I think there was a bit more of using what we had at QPR, very limited resources. And like I said, you have to build everything around Willock and Chair. And towards the end of his tenure, at least, we became very reliant on Chair and Willock to actually perform. Mm-hmm. And if they didn't, then we didn't win.
Yeah, that sort of ties in very much what Rangers were like when Gerrard and Beale were at the club before they departed. Of course, it's results haven't quite gone your way recently. Winless in the last 5. What do you put that down to?
I think other sides have sort of sussed us out a little bit. Like I said, we've become reliant on Chair and Willock to do a lot of stuff. We got Lyndon Dykes, who obviously Scotland international, but he doesn't. It's a sort of endless debate. Does he put away the chances that is given to him, or does he not get enough uh, you know, crosses and such, like opportunities to actually score. I think our crossing is absolutely diabolical. So, you've got a big tall centre forward who's not getting crosses of any quality into him, and most of the time we find ourselves with only one player in the box. You've got quite a few midfielders; they're all talented players, but then none of them are making runs into the box. At least sort of drawing a centre back away, so that Dykes has got an easier run at the ball. The target for the crosses is very obvious, and even then, we can't seem to find him. Like I said, other sides have found us out a little bit. They're sitting deeper in a low block and allowing us, I guess, to have a fair bit of possession. We don't move the ball quick enough, and then it becomes very stale. You end up having a lot of pot shots from outside the box, which, kind of relates to the fact that we have quite a low-ish XG, I'd say. Despite having a lot of chances, that's because a lot of our chances come from outside the box, from outstanding efforts from Chair and Willock. And when they go in, and it's amazing, and it's fantastic. But that's not necessarily down to a great tactical setup or sort of like or anything like that. That's just individual brilliance on the day, and you can't always mitigate for that. So that's something that became quite frustrating in the last couple of games. And it's really kind of disappointing, I guess, that he does move on, because this would be his first opportunity to prove his worth as a manager. Yeah. You've got a big break now with the World Cup. He was going to have to do something with the players at his disposal and, prove your mettle as a manager and come back and put us back in the playoffs again post World Cup. That would be... Yeah. So that is disappointing that we don't get to see what that turns out to be.
Yeah, absolutely. It appears that the backroom staff, he's going to be bringing up the likes of Neil Banfield is one name that's been mentioned, Alex, as well as is it Harry Watling as well, the two coaches at QPR. Can you give us a wee idea of the sort of work that they do and how important are they to his sort of coaching setup there?
I guess the easy answer is we don't know. Like with Banfield, he came in under Mark Warburton, and especially last season, when you look at him, if you were watching the game on Sky and the camera pans around to the dugout, Neil Banfield always seemed to be sitting down, not actually doing anything. And it would be John Eustace, who's actually at Birmingham now. Yeah. He would be the one in Warburton's ear discussing stuff with him. I'd say that's a little bit more different this season. Banfield seems to be a bit more involved. The one thing we know for sure is that Chris Willock came to QPR because of Neil Banfield. He was a big part in that because of his links to him at Arsenal. So I don't know whether, 2 and 2 are going to get put together over the next couple of weeks, and you're going to see stories about Chris Willock heading up to Rangers as well. But that's the most obvious thing that he's done. I think, if I'm getting this right, Harry Watling's the set piece coach. Yeah. Now he's come under a little bit of, I guess, criticism, because we've had a couple of weeks where we've done awful at conceding from set pieces. Like it's become a real problem that losing the first contact and then conceding a goal on the second contact because no one seems to want to challenge. On the positive side, our set pieces going forward, when we've had the right players playing, we've been really threatening. So Stefan Johansson putting the balls into the box, and then Dykes, perhaps Jimmy Dunn, Liam Balogun, they've all been quite threatening when it comes to attacking set plays. But defensively, there's been some real question marks, and depends who you ask. We made a big song and dance about getting a set piece close at the start of the season purely because of Beale. And when you're conceding from set plays, you kind of, what are they doing to sort of mitigate that and stop that from happening? Beale put it down to it being a mentality issue, which I don't quite buy. Like, I guess you can train them to stand in a certain position, and if they're not going to want to put their head in there, then you're never going to actually stop conceding. from corners and such. But at the same time, I'm kind of looking at it thinking, this has become a really, really big issue for us. And there doesn't seem to be anything being done about it, or it doesn't feel like that. So, that's something to keep an eye on at least.
Yeah, that sounds very similar to Rangers, Alex, because the set pieces at Ibrox are absolutely dreadful this season. They've been so bad. So, that's slightly concerning what it's like down there at Loftus Road. Is there any inclination as to potential successors for you guys who could come in and replace them at this point in time?
Yes, I think there's today Football League World, which is always a interesting website. They seem to get exclusives, but I'm never quite sure whether to trust them or not.
Yeah.
They've said Mark Robbins, who's currently at Coventry, and then the other one, which has been, I think, linked, but also probably the fans' preferred option, and seems more likely to happen, would be Critchley, who went and replaced Beale at Villa.
Yeah.
So we're replacing the former Villa coach with another former Villa coach who worked on the Gerrard, and it all seems to be a bit too familiar.
Yeah.
But both of them have sort of characteristics that would match us ideally. They've worked with a shoestring budget, and that's the big plus.
Yeah.
And they've done very well on those very small budgets at Coventry and at Blackpool. Having said that, there's different scouting setups. We were looking for a striker at the same time Coventry were. They end up getting Victor Gyökeres, who's probably the best striker in the Championship, if not sort of right up there. And we end up with Lyndon Dykes. And I love Lyndon, but he's not on the same level as Gyökeres. So, whether that you're able to repeat the same sort of tricks is debatable. But if I was to say who's more likely, it'd probably be Critchley, purely because he's out of contract at the moment.
Yeah,
he's not in a job anywhere, so I could see him coming in.
Yeah, he did a good job at Blackpool before he was poached by Villa. And just a quick note, Leon Balogun, you mentioned that Alex, of course, former Rangers defender. He's a lot of Rangers fans didn't want to see him leave it in the summer. They wanted to see the club give him another extra year on his contract. How's he been getting on down there?
He's very highly rated by a lot of the fans down here, and I guess he's quietly done a job. I haven't been, I'd say, over the moon with what I've seen. I think there's been a few kind of issues where he seems a bit sort of off the pace.
Yeah.
I don't know whether that's because of he's playing a lot more than we expected him to, because we've had some unfortunate injuries with all our centre backs. But if you look at sort of like the stats, he's probably, based on them, our fourth worst centre back. But Beale really liked him and kept on picking him. And even though he wasn't actually captain, I think he was sort of de facto captain.
Yeah.
Definitely one of the leaders in the side. And we actually spoke to our on loan right back, Ethan Laird, who mentioned Leon Balogun as being a big presence in the side, a vocal leader, I think he said. So, he's definitely got experience, but I would say that we've probably got... he wouldn't be in my number one centre-back partnership if we had everyone fit. He seems to be doing a steady job so far.
Yeah. Okay. And if people want to find out a wee bit about the work that you guys do, Alex, if there's any QPR fans amongst the Rangers support, where can they find you?
So we've got Our Generation On Air podcast, which is on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and I think all other sort of good podcast providers. There's a couple of podcasts we did at the start of the season. There was an interview with a Aston Villa fan, and there must have been another preview of what we could expect from Beale right back at the start of this season on there. So if you were kind of interested to hear a bit more of what we thought about Beale prior to him actually having control of the side for a bit, that would be, I guess, useful for you guys. And also there's a really good in-depth article by two of our guys, Dan Lambert and Michael Chudley, on the Our Generation website, which is ourgeneration.net, I believe. But you can also find a link to that on the Our Generation Twitter page, and that goes quite in depth into what we were expecting from Beale at the start of the season, and a lot of that still rings true to now.
Yeah, fantastic. Excellent. Well, thank you very much for your time, Alex. It's very much appreciated, and good luck for the rest of the season.
Thank you, and good luck to you too.